Yeah, there we go.
Hi, everybody. This is Lynn Donovan with Right Time Radio.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Okay, just want to make sure. Sometimes it's questionable around here. What's going on?
It is very. I am so excited. I want to say I've been strong-armed into this, but
I heard there was threats involved.
She had a very good, shall we say, discussion about it, and she convinced me that we can do this, and it'll be okay. So in our studio today is Tracy Beach. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. And she is going to talk about a book that I've been avoiding. But you know what? It's all going to be good. So tell us what you're going to talk about today.
So today I'm going to read from a chapter on my book, Michael. And Michael is about a family of serial killers from Stratton, Colorado, 3 generations. So I wrote the biography of the serial killer family. And I promised Lynn I would not read the chapter where the father skins the guy by hanging him upside down.
Yes.
So
I'm glad we got that by.
See,
so,
and that's the reason of my hesitation prior. But you know what? It's going to be a good day. It's going to be a good show. This is really, really, it is very interesting.
Well, I am going to read one where they do kill somebody, but he's not being skinned.
Yeah.
And there is some cuss words in my book, and so I announced that for each time there's a cuss word, I will say the word goodness instead, which will start being kind of weird, but
expletive deleted.
I think it's going to be humorous.
I wonder if I'm trying to see. I thought I had a censor beep in there.
Oh, no, it's fine. I'll just say goodness. No problem.
Say goodness. It'll just, it's like, let's do it like this. Every time she says goodness, we take a drink of coffee or tea or whatever.
Let's do it for real.
Okay, well, we've got a 30-minute show, Tracy, so let's go ahead and get started as soon as you are ready. She's going to read from the book itself. Now, this book is available on Amazon. It's in kaleidoscopes.
It's at bookstores everywhere, yes.
And are you on, like, Kobo and Barnes & Noble?
I'm on Barnes & Noble, yes.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
then you can pretty much just order my book from anywhere. But in town locally, it is at Kaleidoscope.
Kaleidoscope. And it's called Michael by Tracy Beach, and that's Tracey. Nope. That's why we got to say. Tell them how to spell your name.
Tracy.
Yeah.
And then beach, like going to the beach. And I will be at Kaleidoscope for First Friday this Friday, too.
Awesome. See, so you can get the book and get it signed and all that jazz. So, here we go.
Okay, this is chapter 4, and it's called A Face Full of Bruises and the Purple Rabbit's Foot. As the sun rose, the new morning found Michael McCormick lying in his bed just staring at the ceiling. The night before, he had helped his father dig yet another grave, this time just steps away from his own back door, and it was just pissing Michael off something terrible. Their family farm had almost 3,000 acres of useful ground, yet now there was a dead farmhand riding right outside his back door. But he dared not say anything. Michael knew he wasn't his father's only son. Forcing himself out of bed, he pulled out his work clothes, slid into his boots, and headed to the kitchen for a much-needed cup of coffee. The only bright side Michael could think of that came from his father killing someone was that it normally left him in a good mood for a few days. Hoping that this was the case, he poured the liquid caffeine into his cup, patted his jacket pocket for his cigarettes, and headed outside. But wishing doesn't always make things happen. It was around 11 a.m. that morning when Michael was walking through the animal pens that he thought he heard the distant sound of his father's voice, once again full of rage. Stopping for a second, he strained his ear, hoping that his father's enraged tone was possibly just a flashback to what had happened the night before. It wasn't. Trying to distract himself with his chores, Michael had just started filling a bucket with animal feed when he heard the gunshots. With a loud, irritated sigh, he poured the feed into the troughs, angrily tossed the bucket down, and wiped his hands onto his pants. Goodness! I'm just so sick of this goodness. Shaking his head in disgust, Michael left the cows to their lunch and headed towards the direction of the noise, which appeared to be near the feed truck. As he got closer, he watched as his father stuck his .357 Smith & Wesson back into its holster. Seeing Michael, Tom quickly motioned for him to help straighten out the chute, which was attached to the feed truck. As they worked, his father began going on a rant about how Jim Sinclair had bent the chute and then denied doing it. Sinclair had worked for the McCormicks for quite a while, and he had always been a good worker and a good guy, but now Michael wondered where his body was. Satisfied that the chute was back in working order, Tom gestured for Michael to get into the truck so they could drive it back over to the barn. But as Michael walked closer to the passenger side door and reached for the handle, he found himself scanning the area for any glimpse of Jim Sinclair. Maybe, just maybe, Jim wasn't dead. Maybe my father simply scared him off and he was hiding behind the haystacks. Opening up the passenger side door of the truck, Michael was instantly faced with the answer he didn't want. Slumped over in the driver's seat, with his hand still gripping the shifter, was the body of Jim Sinclair. As Tom opened up the driver's side door, Michael watched as his father coldly shoved the body over towards the passenger seat, which immediately caused the blood to begin leaking out the 2 holes in Sinclair's back and pool onto the floor. Taking a step back, Michael quickly closed the truck's passenger door, jumped into the bed of the truck, and stood with his body leaning against the cab. He was not riding with a dead man. As Tom put the truck in gear and hit the gas, Michael adjusted the weight of his body to match the bumps on the road, and then turns his father was making around the haystacks until Tom finally pulled into the driveway of Michael's own trailer.
All right, we're going to stop for commercial because we could just keep going. You sure we can't have 2 hours, Ted?
Yeah.
So we can read the rest of this?
Pretty sure, no.
You're pretty sure I
Because
can't?
I think, Mr. Rome would probably be a little upset if we
You're
took
right.
his time.
You're right.
But then again,
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes.
Let's throw in a commercial, and
All right.
we'll be right back in a little bit, and Tracy's going to read some more. We are back with Right Time Radio, and we have Tracy Beach in our studio today, and she is reading from her book, Michael.
Parking the truck so the passenger door faced away from the road, Tom yelled at Michael to jump out of the bed of the pickup and open the passenger door. Quickly jumping down from the truck and looking through the passenger side window, Michael noticed that his father was still sitting in the driver's seat, calmly lighting a cigarette. With an annoyed sigh, Michael yanked the passenger door open and discovered that the numerous turns his father had made while driving towards Michael's trailer had caused Jim Sinclair's body to slide down onto the floor. Snapping his fingers at Michael to get his attention, Tom instructed his son to grab the dead man under his shoulders while he himself pushed the body from inside the truck with his feet. With Sinclair crumpled up in a ball, it took a lot of wiggling and tugging to remove the dead man, who finally slid onto the ground with a sickening thud. With no time to dig a grave, Tom pointed over towards his son's homemade storage shed next to the trailer and told Michael to toss the body inside. "And boy, I'm gonna need that truck back real quick like, so make sure you clean it out good," Tom demanded as he turned on the nearby garden hose so he could wash the blood from his hands. God goodness, I got blood on my pants.
that just didn't sound right. I'm sorry.
I can't cuss, it's against the rules.
Beep.
That was the only time Michael smiled. With his father soon finished with the hose and heading towards the barn, Michael opened up the doors of the truck, grabbed the hose, and began washing away the memory of Jen Sinclair. But unfortunately, cleaning out the truck caused the ground to become covered in a large, watered-down puddle of his father's rage. Not wanting to wait for the ground to absorb the bloody evidence, Michael simply kicked dirt over it until the discolored ground disappeared from view. As night finally fell over the farm, Michael watched the familiar dance of the backhoe, whose partner was a farmhand whose only sin was pissing off his father. But as Michael took a swig of his beer, he was shocked to see that his father was also tearing down his homemade storage shed and pushing it into the hole. Constructed out of hay bales with a custom-made wooden roof that Michael had spent an entire afternoon building, Tom used the bucket of the machine to push the structure on top of the dead farmhand, along with 2 old shovels the shed contained, which obviously his father didn't care 2 goodnesses about. With a pat of wood scraps.
I'm sorry. There's just something wrong with it.
You said I can't cuss.
Take a drink of coffee.
With a path of wood scraps and loose hay leading over to the newly covered grave, Michael felt his anger build. In just a few minutes, he would have to go into the trailer and explain to his wife, well, there was now 2 dead men buried under the area that used to be her flower garden. The next morning greeted Michael with an overcast sky and approaching storm clouds, which matched his mood perfectly. As he carried his coffee cup down his trailer steps, he looked towards the bunkhouse and saw a farmhand up on the backhoe, oblivious to what it had been used for used for the night before. And as the machine turned towards the rising sun, Michael watched as the sunlight caused the blood to glisten like ghastly gemstones on the blades of the bucket. "Michael, you forgot your hat," Kathy announced as she walked up behind her husband and gave him a quick kiss. "I'm heading off to work. See you tonight." Kathy was Michael's second wife, after his first marriage to his high school sweetheart, Danielle, ended after only a year. They had married right out of school, but unfortunately, Michael didn't just inherit his father's love of farming, but he also inherited his temper. Danielle had watched Tom beat up Michael and then watched Michael turn on her. Unfortunately, the divorce hadn't taught him anything, as he began beating his second wife, Kathy, before the ink was even dry on his marriage license. But this time, his father stepped in. Having a soft spot for Kathy, Tom walked in on his new daughter-in-law, laying bruised and bloodied on the trailer floor, and decided to take his rage out on Michael. After forcing his son to experience what he had just put his new bride through, Tom demanded that Michael take a good look at his wife's battered body and tell her that he was sorry. Tell her that she didn't deserve it and that he would never hit her again, and he never did. With Tom's anger finally pacified after the deaths of two farmhands, the workday went off without a hitch, and as the sun finally began to set and the farmhands headed into the bunkhouse for dinner, Michael took a quick swig of beer and called it a day. Walking back into his trailer, he climbed the front steps, walked inside, took off his sweat-stained shirt, and collapsed onto a dining room chair. But as his wife, Kathy, walked toward him with a fresh beer in her hand, she was once again confronted with his scars. After a lifetime of abuse by the hands of his father, Michael's back told the grisly story of his childhood. Covered in old lacerations, some deeper than others, you could almost make out the shape of the metal coat hanger that was used to make them. Michael had told his wife stories of how he would try to stop his father from beating his mother and would put himself between them, trying so hard to protect her. He thought if he took the beatings, it would prevent his mother from getting hit too. But it didn't. But inside his trailer, he was able to relax, eat his dinner in peace, and spend some quiet time alone with his wife. And as the hour became late, Michael crawled into bed and hoped that sleep would help erase what had happened the night before. Knock, knock, knock. "Please no, not tonight. I'm so tired." Knock, knock, knock. "Excuse me, Mr. McCormick, are you awake?" Quickly jumping out of bed, Michael threw on a pair of pants and quickly ran to open the front door. Not really sure what to expect, he was surprised to find one of their newer farmhands, a huge Indian they called Chief, standing on the front steps, and he looked like he had seen a ghost. "Mr. McCormick, sir, I'm sorry to wake you, but there's a guy in the bunkhouse having a seizure, and I think he's dying," Chief added as he pointed back towards the building. Hearing the fear in the farmhand's voice, Kathy quickly got dressed, grabbed her coat, and followed Michael and Chief toward a crowd of people who were all in full-blown panic. Pushing his way into the bunkhouse, Michael saw his parents trying to force whiskey down the throat of Richard Britton, who was violently convulsing on the floor, as bystanders screamed at him to swallow it. Richard had started working for the McCormicks back in 1972 after being hired through H&R Employment in Denver, but like most of the workers they got from here, Richard was a severe alcoholic. Richard, can you hear me? Richard, wake up. You son of a goodness."
He's shaking his head.
Oh, man.
"I can't cuss," Tom demanded as he violently smacked the farmhand across the face. Looking over at Michael, Tom let out a disappointing sigh as he accepted defeat and laid Richard back down onto the floor. "Guess we'll have to see if he's still alive in the morning. There isn't anything else we can really do." Tom McCormick didn't normally care about any of his workers, but Richard helped him out with the chop shop he ran out of the garage. But now with his head mechanic thrashing around the floor from the DTs, Tom began to wonder which farmhand he trusted enough to take his place if Richard died during the night. Want me to keep going?
Let's take another commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff that have to do with this book and other things that are coming up. It is a good book. It is a good story. I apologize for not letting you be on the show earlier.
They didn't skin everybody.
No, not everybody.
Well, that's encouraging. So it's more of a family book.
It is.
It It is about a
Lord.
family saga.
It is a family saga, yes.
All right, after this. We are back with Right Time Radio, and we have Tracy Beach in the studio. We're talking about her book, Michael. Tracy, tell us where in the world did you get all these details, because there's such good details on this family and their story.
Well, a handful of years ago, my family had joined a paranormal team in Colorado Springs, and we would do free paranormal investigations. And one of the investigations was at an old farm in Stratton, and we didn't know any of the history about it. We had just known that the owners were very terrified about spookies walking around their farm and touching them and talking to them. So we went and did a paranormal investigation, and while we were there, we learned all about the history of this farm and the murders and the serial killers and the bodies that were buried on the property, 3 of which have been dug up by the police department.
Wow.
And so they put me in touch with the Wheat Ridge Police Department, and they had wanted a book written about their biggest case. Took them 4 years to solve it. Wow. So they gave me a disc that contained all of the police reports, the interviews with the killer, interviews with survivors, autopsies, everything. And there was all the photos. The only rule was I had to stick strictly to what was in the police reports. I couldn't dig deep like I normally do, which was kind of disappointing. I couldn't interview family members. I couldn't interview anybody. I could only stick strictly to the police reports. And I did interview the police officers for about a day and got all the inside little funny stories that don't make it into police reports. But I couldn't go as far as I usually do because a lot of the people are still alive.
You know, you can't tell it from listening to the story, because it's detailed like a fiction novel where you fill in all the blanks, you know.
Yeah.
So it is amazing how well that's written. So I appreciate your talent in that. Well, listen, I know that we're going to have you again next week on another subject. It's going to be about the Stanley Hotel. Tell us what's going on with that.
Well, my next book I'm working on is called The Fourth Floor, The Ghost of the Stanley Hotel. And the fourth floor of the Stanley Hotel, which is in Estes Park, is the main source of the hauntings that they have there. And the thing I like about the Stanley is it's one of the most haunted hotels in the entire United States, but it's not scary haunted, it's actually happy haunted. The people who haunt the Stanley Hotel are actually there because of all the fun and the joy they had being there back in the day, and they just simply returned. The ghosts that you see are actually, they're wearing ball gowns, they're playing out on the fourth floor, they're having, they're watching concerts, you can hear pianos playing, and you see ghosts that walk by and they're wearing these gowns and the top hats, and Mr. Stanley has been seen almost daily checking up on his hotel staff to make sure everything's good. So it's extremely haunted building, but it's not a violent haunted. There's no pinching or scratching or anything.
Interesting. They have all kinds of tours and all kinds of things. Now, what are you going to be doing? You're going to be writing. Are you writing a new book about this? Or are you
Yes,
doing something
I'm
else?
writing the book, and it's called The Fourth Floor.
You just said that. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
it's okay.
Zoned a little bit.
Try to keep up.
I will try, you know.
I'm doing the research now and on the Stanley, and I just think it's really funny, the different stories I'm finding about how people kind of entertained themselves back in the day, and that's the stuff we're going to be talking about.
Yeah.
I just found it kind of really comical.
Awesome. Well, we're going to do that next week. So Tracy's going to be back. Thank you, Tracy, for coming back. Now, in June, you've got some really fun stuff going on. Not that Stanley Hotel's not fun, but this is really, really going to be cool. Tell us what's happening June 3rd.
Well, I'm working with Pam, who owns the Kaleidoscope Inspirations in town, the store, and she belongs to the Elks Lodge in Pueblo, and the Elks Lodge was one of the 2 refugee centers for flood victims during the 1921 Pueblo flood. We're going to be doing a 100-year celebration of the 100-year flood, and we're going to be dressing up in 1920s clothes, having a 1920s style banquet. They have a big, huge church bell up on the roof, and exactly 6 o'clock at night on the 3rd, we're going to go up there and we're going to ring the bell, which is the time in which they rang the original alarms to signify the flood was coming.
Yeah, that is
so we're going to be I'll do a presentation there. I'll have my books out. We're going to have a bunch of old cars parked outside the Elks Lodge.
Neat. So it'll look authentic.
It'll look authentic, yes. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That I can't wait. And I have made her promise me she will keep me abreast of what's going on. Now, I'm going to have her back on the show then in May on the 19th. So it's 2 weeks prior to that celebration.
Yes.
So we can update everybody on it and get out your flappers dress and your whatever they called the
Yeah,
men.
I'm sure a lot of people hanging on to those. So.
Well, we actually have speakeasy type get-togethers here in Canyon City, so I'll bet there's some people that have.
Oh, I'm sure.
Well, they have
kinda-
those great Gatsby parties.
Yeah, exactly, like that. So that'll be a lot of fun. All right. Well, what else is going on with you? We've got a few more minutes. We can talk about Tracy.
I'm just working on that. Oh, and then also my daughter and I, we are starting a YouTube channel.
Okay.
And
cool.
on the YouTube channel, we're going to be returning to all the cool tunnels that I have discovered in my tunnels under my underneath the sidewalks.
Yep.
And then we're going to be going back and taking people through the tunnels. We're going to be taking people into all my different areas that I've done my books on.
Okay.
So
and recording it and
gonna be-
putting it on YouTube.
I have
Yes.
a question. We had Kathleen Eaton in here from the Royal Gorge Regional Museum and History Center talking about Prohibition.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I asked her, because we had talked about the tunnels.
Right.
Do you think those were used part of the Prohibition, moving alcohol in between buildings?
Not in Canyon, because
No?
there wasn't any in Canyon. But in lots of other areas, they were using the old tunnels that were originally used for merchandise and using them to store booze in.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of morphed into a place to hide your bootleg booze.
Oh, darn.
Yeah.
If only it was still there. How skunky would that be?
Well, it depends on what kind of alcohol it was.
That's true.
You figure if it's aged 100 plus
Scotch,
years,
it'd be, yeah.
man,
but
that stuff would be worth a
This is
fortune.
bathtub gin. This stuff made you blind if they didn't cook it right. So,
Yeah, that's true.
that or you can run your car on it.
yeah.
Your jet plane.
Yeah, probably.
Well, that is awesome. When you know what the name of your YouTube is, let us know, and we'll put it on our website. So in case you want to go to our website, it's righttimeradio.my-free.website. Anything else we got going on, Mr. Tay?
About 15 seconds worth
Yeah,
now.
15 seconds. So if you need to email me, it's righttimeradio@gmail.com. Let me know that you are writing something and you'd like to share it on the radio. Let
Sounds
me know.
like a good plan.
And I
Yeah.
will be at Kaleidoscope this Friday from
Yeah.
5 to 7.
Right.
We are Royal Gorge Broadcasting, AM 1400, KRLN, Canyon City, Florence, and Penrose.